John Curtin has spent a lifetime selling standardbreds in the main to the United States. Today we get a chance to sit down, have a chat to the man who sold more than $100 million worth of bloodstock over 50 years. He's put together the deals with the likes of Auckland Reactor and Lazarus, two of the biggest in the history of the sport. We sit down with him, have a chat to him about some of those sales and also his passion for the standardbred. John Curtin, I've waited a wee while to be able to do this.
You have?
You've been in this game, well, pretty much your entire life.
53, 54 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did it all begin? Was harness racing in particular, or horse racing in the family genes, so to speak?
Not really, no. His father died when I was 32. There's 5 of us in the family. My mother remarried.
When he was 32? When
he was 32,
right.
Yeah. And my
How
mother,
old were you?
7.
Right.
And there's 5 of us, and my mother remarried Des McCarthy, and we shifted to Hamilton, right next to the Claudelands Raceway.
Right.
That's where it really started. We used to go over there as a family to the racetrack, and we actually saw, I remember seeing Karting and Valiant Warrior, a couple of good names from those days. Saw them both race there, and we used to go over. That's where it really started. Then I went dairy farming when I was 13, before and after school.
How did that go with school life, and what sort of scholar were you?
I used to be top of the class when I started at secondary school, and then I started milking cows at 3 o'clock in the morning for the Maris brothers in Hamilton.
Right.
And after that, I ended up going to sleep in class. True story, they left me there one day till 6 o'clock at night, and the brothers were still standing there.
You might not have got the cows done that
We
night.
didn't. They rang up the farmer and told them I wouldn't be there.
Right.
And then they went and saw my parents and said, look, you'd better to leave school and go dairy farming.
So that's what you did.
But I was 15.
Yeah. Didn't you buy a dairy farm not long after that? A couple of years after that?
No, share milked for quite a number of years. Worked on farms for quite a number of years and share milked for quite a number of years. And then my brother, he was share milking as well. And we sold our cows and bought a small farm right next to the temple in Hamilton there.
Yep.
Right next to Rod Mackenzie's. And we had that for 6 months, doubled our money, and we went down to Rapparoa and bought that farm.
Right.
The 2 of us, so 270 acres down in Rapparoa.
Right, that's what I remember. And that became Curtin Farms?
Correct.
Right, right. Quite a big transition. Gee, there must have been some work in that back then.
Yeah, we never thought much of it. It was always work. There's always been dairy farming. You always work. You never think you can do anything else.
Yeah.
And it was only through our love of harness racing. I mean, it's a passion. It's a disease, isn't it? Really, once you get it. And I think it's a disease anyhow. And once we got it, we started. We never missed a trotting meeting anywhere in the North Island. My brother and I. We used to go to every trotting meeting there was. Milk the cows early and off to the race. It was always 3 hours to Auckland.
Yep.
You know, from down there, from down Hamilton Way. And no, it was really good, and that's how the horse business started. National Bloodstock was in full swing, Kenwood Stud was in full swing, and we started grazing horses for them, and the cows slowly disappeared, and the horses took over, and that's what happened. So
we'll get to the share market crash and what happened after that shortly. Is that about the time you started doing the yearlings? And we've got some incredible photos of a yearling sale where I think you took 150 yearlings?
Something like 150 yearlings
to
for
a
sales. Yep.
What were you thinking?
I don't know what we were thinking in those days, but you've got to remember in '87, I think there was like just under 9,000 mares bred in New Zealand.
Right.
So it was quite a big business in those days.
What are we down to now? 1,700?
It's amazing, really. Probably down to less than 1,000 pacing foals born this year. Yeah. Probably, I'd say.
That's a problem, but it's probably a discussion for another day.
Yep, for sure.
That must have been some undertaking. Staff?
We didn't have much staff. My brother and I, and my brother-in-law, and I think 2 other guys. We didn't have much staff in those days. We did it all ourselves. Yeah. I was also an AB technician for the cows, and I did that for the horses as well. We started right up early. Right. So we were artificially inseminating the horses way back then. We had 330 foals born one year in Rapparoa. Wow. We had 12 foals born on Christmas night. I always remember that because I was a night watchman that night. Started at 4 o'clock in the morning right through to 8 o'clock. These foals were just
religion's always been around your life. It was there, then it went away, and then about the time that things went pear-shaped, you went back to it. I'm not surprised.
That's right.
I don't mean to put too fine a point on it, but
you're right. You're right.
You got to a point where, well, you went broke. Yeah. Let's be absolutely fair.
Well, it was actually what happened in those days in '87 was they had these joint and several guarantees and all partnerships of all the business world out there in New Zealand. It wasn't just us; it was just thousands and thousands of people. We had a lot of syndicates in Wellington.
Right.
And 10 to 20 business guys in Wellington just claiming the tax. That's what they were doing, because that's what the government did. And when the share market came, they all started to collapse one after the other.
Right.
And joint and several guarantees meant that we were responsible for everybody's debt. So that was the end of that. Probably the best thing that ever happened to us, really.
Yeah, because then you had to start again. You had to reinvent yourself. So how did you do that?
First thing I did was get married.
Along came Sally.
Along came Sally.
Yep. And your son, Jonathan.
Yep.
So
that's right.
Yeah, you had some big changes in your life at that point.
Massive changes.
So what are we talking? 1990, somewhere around there.
Yeah, around about 1990. Yeah. I spent 6 months in America. I had a friend in Australia, Alabar actually. One of the guys at Alabar helped us out to send a couple of horses to North America. So I took 2 horses up. That was the first 2 horses I took to America.
Yep.
I think it was Riley and False Image.
Yep.
They were the 2 horses.
False Image raced down in Canterbury. I remember it racing. Yep.
Yep, for the boy Peter
yes,
Blackmore,
that's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's right. And Riley was for Les Purden up here in Auckland. So we took those 2 horses to North America, and that was a great experience for that 6 weeks up there.
Yep.
And of course, prior to that, I'd been done all the stud tours up there 2 or 3 times on my own, and got to meet a lot of the stud people.
Is that how you got BG's Bunny? Is that how that all tied in with Geiger Bloodstock?
Geiger Bloodstock, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he was really a hell of a good guy. He wanted to get some new stallions. BG's Bunny was the first one. Little interesting story there. So he was, I think he was like $300,000 New Zealand, and he only lasted 12 months. He had the one crop, and left that great mare, excuse me, which has changed the breed entirely down here in New Zealand, really.
Yep.
And he was a great broodmare sire, but that, excuse me, was a great story on its own. I don't really know what happened with that. So I sold it from the Purdens here to North America, and it bled so badly it couldn't race up there. Charlie Roberts bought the mare back to New Zealand and paid more for it than what we sold it for as a racehorse.
Right.
And the reason was he rang Stanley Dancer up there, and Stanley Dancer told him, "You've got a BG's Bunny mare, they're the best."
Right.
So that's what he paid overs for it, so he deserved to get all the success he got, really.
So that started, in many ways, the Andrew Grierson, Charlie Roberts Woodland stud.
Absolutely.
That's where it kicked in.
Well, I couldn't get, none of the studs wanted BG's Bunny to stand. I couldn't find anybody.
No.
So Andrew Grierson, my vet, told me to go and see Charlie, so I sat down with Charlie one day. That's how it happened. You
got about 250 foals from that first one, and as you say, excuse me, just completely changed.
Changed the breed, just amazing.
Adore me, have faith in me, everything with a bloody me in its name, and they can all run.
Yep, everyone, no question.
You must take great pride in that.
It was really great to see. You know, I was really, really pleased. Especially, it was bad for the guy that bought it in America.
Yes.
The fact that he got out of it. And come down here and did such a great job down here. It's just amazing, really.
So from BG's Bunny, the next biggest influence, well, definitely in the stallion world, in the pocket arrived.
Absolutely. Once again, John Geiger. So he said to me, "You got to get a great stallion." So it was the early days of the shuttling business. Just a year prior to John Geiger, I organised 4 stallions to come down all from Ohio, from Pickwick Farms in Ohio. Just forgotten some of them. There was 2 to Scooter, chairman of the board. There was 4 of them anyhow, and they went to quarantine. And the day before they left, the day before they were leaving to come down under, the breeders in Ohio, the breeders in the state of Ohio got together and put an injunction on them to stop them coming down. They didn't want their horse to leave the state. Right. And that was really, the shuttle business really started from there. The next year we got those horses, we went to court. Jack Rice took them to court, the breeders, and I was a good friend of the Governor of the state of Ohio at the time with Jack Rice, a great friend, and he just said to me, "John," he said, "you'll have it organised for next year, no problems," which we did. Which you did. Yeah. And that's where the shuttle business really started. And I just looked back the other day, and I was thinking, you know, some people said that the thoroughbred started before us. Well, there was 1 or 2 way back, but it was 1990 Darley that really started bringing the thoroughbred stallions in. So it was really as a result of in the pocket for a start coming into New Zealand. Yep. And he left the great horse, Christian Cullen. Yep. Yeah. And again, that just continued the in the pocket line. Absolutely. He was, and you would have seen him
It's a great wee spot, by the way, that we're parked up in here at Alexandra Park, but you would have seen him. He was the closest thing that I ever saw to a thoroughbred with a sulky behind him. He was just a beautiful, beautiful horse.
John Campbell told me, greatest driver in history, he told me he drove him, and people wondered why he always got, there was heats in those days. There was him and Beachdale. Beachdale would always beat him in the second heat. And he told me, John, In the Pocket was the only horse I've ever driven that could pace a 1:51. And that's way back in those days.
Wow.
He said what the trouble was with In the Pocket in the second heat, he gave so much in the first heat.
Yeah.
That's what
and
John Campbell.
Cullen tried that hard,
Yep.
you know, and that's ultimately what was his demise on the racetrack. But then he went to the breeding barn and, well, you couldn't buy a yearling for under 50,000 at one stage. It was just a phenomenon, wasn't he?
It was a phenomenon. I remember the big year after, I think it was after Tapella Rose, Courage Under Fire and a few others, but I think that year the service fee was 4,000 if I remember rightly, and I was getting so many calls for the horse. I wanted to put up to 10,000.
Right.
I got a visit from Charlie and from Andrew coming in to see me. You've got to stop this. We'll never get the mares. Well, we got 300 that year.
Yeah.
10,000. You know, it was just amazing.
Oh, I remember when Cullen, I think he started out at 5, ended up at 25.
Yep.
Yeah. Sometimes putting a dearer price on them
Makes
can
a
mean
difference.
you get a better mare.
A better
don't
mare,
you?
for sure.
And we'll talk about Auckland Reactor, which was part of his demise, possibly as a stallion. Your association with the States and in particular Joe Mascara in the late 90s probably changed your life in many ways.
Incredible man he was, really. I sold a horse, Kelvin Harrison, a good friend of mine up there, ex-New Zealander, he rang us and said that I'd been going to the Little Brown Jug every year for like 9 years. And I was always sit with Joe Mascara and I was always trying to take videotapes up for him to buy horses, and he'd never buy one. And this year, Kelvin rang us up and said, Joe wants you to sell Trump Casino.
Yep.
So I sold Trump Casino to the Lambs in Australia.
Stood in Australia, didn't he?
Yep. For the Lambs in Australia, that's Belinda McCarthy's parents, and 30,000 it was. So I rang him back and said, where do you want the 30,000? He said, keep it there, I'll buy a horse. And that's actually how it started.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Incredible man, really, but he was his own man. He was great for New Zealand because he probably put 30, 40 million of his own money into the horses in New Zealand.
So what was his background? Building? Was he in that?
He was
real
building,
estate?
but he's also part-time trainer for fun. He used to buy horses in the early days, and he bought a horse. I think it was Charlie Garrison. I think it was. The dollar was the opposite way around then.
Right.
Cost him a lot more money to buy a horse from down here, but he loved it because in those days he couldn't get the information that he wanted. And I'd send him as much information as he wanted, but he made his own decisions what he bought.
Right.
You just put the facts
in front of him. Yep.
and he made it. He used to say to me once or twice, I'd say, Joe, I don't think you should buy that horse. He'd say, well, if you don't want to sell it to me, I'll ring one of the other agents. That's what he used to say.
Yeah.
Joe, he's a great guy like that. And I stayed with him many, many times up there, and we were very fortunate. Sally and myself both saw him 2 or 3 days before he died, so it was really good up there.
Now you can settle something for me here. Mark III or Mac III?
Mark III.
Definitely Mark.
Mark III, yeah.
I've tried to tell a few people that, and they don't want to take it on.
Mark
but
III,
it's definitely Mark III, isn't it?
Yep.
M-A-C-H, but it's Mark.
Yep. Another great story there with that horse.
Tell me about that. He was a brilliant racehorse.
He was, yeah. And the first time I actually saw him was in the Little Brown Jug as a 3-year-old. But when I bought him, go back to the story.
So you bought him while he was racing?
Yep.
Yep.
The beginning of his 3-year-old career. So.
What sort of money are we talking here?
2.25 million US.
Let's play on a serious game.
Well, it was quite funny because Peter Heffering was a good friend of mine, and he was trying to buy it for quite a while. He kept offering more and more money, and the lady that was the husband had died, and the lady had left the horse, and Bill Robinson had the horse, and he rang me up one day and said, Peter said to me, he said, John, I can't buy him. He said, you do what you can. He said, but I'm out. 1.5 million, I'm out. So I said, well, it's all right if I ring Joe Mascara and let him know. And he said, yeah, you ring him, tell him I'm out. So Joe said, well, can you buy him? I said, well, money buys anything, Joe.
Yeah.
So I said, you know, he said, well, you see what you can do. And I said, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to just pay a lot more? And he said, whatever it takes. So I jumped on a plane that very day, flew up to Canada, and went and saw the lady. Lovely lady she was. Took a couple of bottles of wine with us. Had a friend up there. Yep. And we were there for a few hours and had plenty of drink, and we got the horse done. Give her a cheque the next day for 2.25 million.
And he raced then in probably the biggest race day of your life, I'd imagine.
Yeah,
because
he raced in the Berries Creek the week before the Madeline's Pace,
Yep.
and he got beaten third. I had about 4 calls from different people in America. You shouldn't have bought that horse. You shouldn't have bought that horse.
They always love to do
that
it post the race day.
there was something
Yeah.
wrong with him when you bought him. He said you got caught badly, and it's quite funny really because. But he come out and did. Joe bought him for the Madeline's Pace.
That's what he wanted to win.
That's what he wanted to win. So there's photos on the wall there, but. He was just so wrapped with that whole deal, you know. And he was a great horse. And he wasn't so much early. The first crop of yearlings here in New Zealand, the agents, I think it was Pines in those days, they were out telling people that he wouldn't make it, the scrawny little things. He said, yeah, that's a true story. I got these calls and I was saying, why would you do that sort of stuff? But at the end of the day, he just got better and better and better. And
his longevity too was a testament to just how good he was. I think he won 2.4 million on the track, but what he left off it was quite remarkable, including another horse we'll talk about shortly, and an Auckland Reactor who was a remarkable pacer. Some of the horses that Joe bought, Mac Destroyer, Tomba, there was just to string them, and you're right, for so many horse people in New Zealand, he changed their lives.
Changed their lives. We were selling, 3 horses, $300,000 horses a week to him. And he just wanted to he wanted to see his horses racing every night of the week. And that's what he lived for. He was he sold out of his business, and he was just living for the horses.
Yep. So. Tell me, how did Supreme Harness then come about? Was that when he went
about the same time? Yeah. Well, Alea Waja, good friend of ours, still working for us today. Right. She started working for us 25 years ago, and she got a legal background, and Joe was one of those guys that wanted to talk on the phone all the time. Right. And phone bills were huge in those days. But eventually it was Alea that was talking to him all the time, and he fell in love with Alea, really. Right. And she just helped us so much that it just. And she still works for you now. Still works for us now. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Still does a bit for us now. Any legal work, she's the best. She's the best. Yeah. She's the best by far. So, and she's been up there and stayed with them as well. We'd all stayed up there. I'd stay up there probably 20, 30 times, 2 or 3 weeks at a time. It's hard to get away once I drove up there. Once you're there, yeah. And he put money in through that, right here at Alexandra Park. Yep. The 05 Into Dominion, which was won by El Sue. Correct. Was sponsored by Mark III, wasn't it? Yep. We got a lot of mares out of that. Right. Signed up down walking on the track. Always doing a bit of trading, aren't you, JC? Yeah, always doing a bit of trading. We got a lot of mares out of that. But that's great. I mean, that's what should have happened. Yep. That's why you do sponsor. That's why you get involved in those things. And you, correct me if I'm wrong, were you first to bring in the pay on live foal? I can't really remember. Or whether you were. I think we tried that with Joe. Joe tried that. Yeah, I think I read that somewhere. Yeah, he wanted to try. Just going back to Mark III, Ladies in Red. That was his last. Well. Last foal. I mean, we're filming this in June. Yeah. She won again on Saturday. She's just a brilliant race mare. Yeah. Yeah. Best mare in Australia. Yep. By some margin. Yep. And he turned out to be a real good broodmare side too. Yeah, incredible. Harness Link. So how did this come about? Was this another JC wild idea, dreamt up at night one night and away you went? Well, one of the hardest things in those days was getting information. Right. For instance, when In the Pocket first came down, when they first started racing in North America, he never had a stud behind him. He went from state to state. George Shaw owned him, and he just moved them around all the time. If you haven't got a stud behind you up there, you're in big trouble. The horse did a very good job up there, really. But I used to ring every morning, the USDA, David Card, what horses raced last night by In the Pocket, and he'd be ready for me every day. And so getting information was always hard in those days. And if you're passionate about the business, you can't get enough. Yep. You know that, and you can't get enough information. So Harness Link, there was only four sites in the world. Jeff Small was one of them. He was up early. Yep. And I can't remember the other ones. I think it was USTA in Canada, I think it was. We started back then not thinking it'd ever get to what it was here, but the idea was to try and collect as much information as we can. And have a one-stop shop. One-stop shop, that was the idea. And so that was October 2002? Yes, 22 years, this coming up October. Wow. I don't know how we survived. No. But that must have taken some putting together. So essentially, you've got journalists all around the world sending all the information in, and you guys put it into a one-stop shop for people. And they can go to whichever country or that they want to get that info from. When we started, you couldn't even watch a video online. Right. Well, that's how far it's come. That's how far it's come. Yeah. It's changed dramatically, and it's just got better and better. 2 or 3 times in the last 20 years I was going to just throw it away. Felt like that, but there was too many, the numbers were too good and you could never start it again.
So you get about 1 million individual
users
each year?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, all the harness racing worldwide, if you're not watching Harness Link, you're missing on something, missing on a bit of information.
Yep.
And it's just a hard thing to keep going. It's really, really hard.
Is it getting to that point?
Well, I've always put every dollar we've ever earned into Harness Link.
Yeah.
I'd hate to tell you what it's cost us in those 20 years, but every dollar we've ever earned's gone into Harness Link.
Yeah.
And that's...
How many staff?
16 right now.
16?
16, yeah, 16 right now.
So how many based here in New Zealand?
In New Zealand we've got Brad Reed, of course.
Yep.
And we've got another chap down there, Bevan Gregg, does a good job. Bruce Stewart down the deep south.
Yes.
And that's it in New Zealand, just at the top of my head. We've got 2 in Canada. We've got Steve Wolf.
Met Steve.
Met Steve.
He's great knowledge.
Yep. We've got, and John Berry, another great rider up there, getting parts of it. He still does great stories. And we still get quite a bit from other places. And you know, the other thing is the industry, the industry like Harness Racing Australia and USDA, Standardbred Canada, they're always looking for stories from us, and we're looking for stories from them if we haven't got
Harness Racing New Zealand?
Harness Racing New Zealand, we have a great arrangement with them, really. Yep. Everybody's been pretty cooperative in terms of the news. It's getting harder anywhere, and you know, I fear the day that Harness Link might go, if somebody doesn't keep it going, one day, you know, how much
You're
less?
a salesman, is it for sale? Is it for sale?
Always for sale.
Always for sale.
But we really need somebody else to come in and...
With the passion.
The passion.
Because that's what it comes back to,
yeah,
doesn't
young
it, really?
people. You need the young people. Yeah.
All right, let's park the Harness Link there and go back to your bloodstock. I was reading, and you're a big part of an American trial, which we'll get to in a moment too. You've sold over 1,000 horses. Over
1,000 horses.
Totalling about $75 million, somewhere around there.
Over 100 million now.
100 million now?
With the stallions, yeah.
Wow.
Over 100 million. It's a long time, many years.
It's a long time, but that's a huge amount of money and a huge amount of horses. Let's talk about a couple of the pin-ups that you've been associated with. We talked about Mark III and his best son, Auckland Reactor.
Yep.
That was a big deal, wasn't it?
It was a great deal.
What did he win? His first 17 in a row.
Yep.
He was just a remarkable racehorse.
Yep.
Tell me what it took to get that deal done, and that was over $3 million from memory.
Probably the quickest deal ever been done in history.
Really?
Yep. I just rang Peter Heffling and told him how good this horse was, showed him the videos, and 2 or 3 days later he had 10 guys at $350,000 each.
Right.
The deal was done.
Done.
As quick as that. It was just an amazing.
Was he still racing then? He was. Yep. So at what point did you?
11th. That was his 11th win, I think. We bought.
Right. Yeah.
Tony Parker was good to deal with. No problems there.
Yeah.
Mark Purdon was good to deal with.
Well, he'd been in the breeding game all his life, and Mark loved the horse.
Yep.
Yeah, he had a wonderful affinity with him, didn't he?
No, he was a great horse, really.
Yeah, I think he won 7 Group 1s. He won a heap of the Inter-Dominion heaps, but he couldn't quite get it right for the final.
Correct, yeah, and that was strange.
Second in the Hunter Cup behind Choice Achiever.
That was unlucky second too.
Yeah, he should have won that.
He should have won that.
Should have won that. Taylor Mile, Messenger, Jules, Auckland Cup, he did all of those as a 4-year-old.
Yep. And can you imagine the Auckland Cup that year was worth $600,000?
Yeah, it was a lot of money, wasn't it? I looked that up.
Yep.
Yeah. It's not fair to call him a failure at stud because Chase Auckland was a brilliant racehorse. He didn't get the quality of mare.
I think we made a mistake. We sold him cheap. I wanted big numbers because that was the thing in those days, the big numbers, but I think it was a detriment to the horse, really, at the end of the day.
Is that because of the quality?
Quality, probably, yeah. Cheaper and too many out there. But, you know, he's, contrary to what people think, he's still doing a hell of a good job. America, Australia, he's still putting out winners every week. You look up every week. I thought that would have been gone long ago, but and he's still going all right over there in Australia.
Of course, he was by Mark III, so there was a direct link to him. I mentioned Chase Auckland before. The day he beat King of Swing in the Sire Stakes final, when they went off the charts, 152, I think it was, mile rate at Addington in the Sire Stakes final. And I know he sat in the trail, and look what King of Swing went on to do. 3-time Miracle Mile, and he won everything. Hunter Cups, multiple Hunter Cups. You know, he's just a great racehorse, but he beat him that day.
Yep.
In that incredible time.
Yeah. No, he was a great horse, he was, really.
Yep.
Shame he broke down at the finish. One of those things that happened.
Yeah. He should have won Miracle Mile.
Should have won a Miracle Mile for sure, yep.
Leads us on to the greatest modern day horse, in my opinion. I thought Christian Cullen was the best I'd seen, but Lazarus Well, he's at least on a par.
Yeah, for sure. No, he was a great horse. Nobody can deny that anywhere in the world. And
well, he proved it all
yep,
around the world.
He did, all around the world. And in America, the only mistake we made in America, I think anyhow, was he wasn't put on Lasix the last few starts, because he bled his last start up there.
Yep.
And that was the only problem with him. But, you know, they've given him a very good shot up there, and he's doing all right. Like, I think the first 2 crops right now are averaging, like, I think about $60,000 per foal bred, which is a hell of a good, really. And I think he's going to really make it down here. I think it's just a matter of a bit more time. Yep. Haven't got many, that's the problem. He only got 15 or 16 in New Zealand, 40 in Australia, 3-year-olds. Because
he had some fertility problems, didn't he,
initially? Yeah.
Yes, yep.
Well, of course, that was probably the greatest deal ever done in history, Lazarus deal, you know, for $4 million. These guys bought the horse. It's a great story how we got there, but they bought the horse, and within 12 months had all their money back plus. They got $2.5 million US from Australia, and they got syndicated the horse in America. So within 12 months, they had their horse back. They had their money back. I mean, how many deals could be done like that? Very, very rare. I thought that was one of my greatest ever deals, really.
Well, that's saying something, because we've heard about a few of them. You got a favourite Lazarus win? Mark Max, when he said get Nasser on the phone in that New Zealand Cup, was probably my favourite. But he won the Dan Patch, didn't he, in America? That probably rated right up there.
Yep.
McWicked was in there.
Yep. All the good horses were in that race, and he drew the 9-hole. He just wasn't. That was an incredible performance, that was. I just think they had him at the races too quick.
Right.
You know, he's out for 3 months, and he got up there, I think 6 or 7 weeks later, he was just that good. Like, if anybody has to look up his trial, his first trial qualifier up there, who did he beat? Lather Up, fair and square.
Right.
Lather Up, the fastest horse in the world, you know. Same with Lazarus, so there was no doubt he was a great horse. Everybody knows that.
No question. Tell me about this IRS case that you were involved in.
We didn't know what we were really getting into. We were really surprised what we were getting into. But at the end of the day, we spent 2 years, every morning, 4 o'clock till 7 o'clock every morning was allowed to get home to our kids when we were in jury, and 3 hours every morning, 5 days a week, to try and get to the trial. And eventually we got to the trial, and expert witnesses, and it was all a case about, in America, if you're having a hobby, you can't continue to have losses.
Right.
If you're a business guy and you've got a hobby on the side, you can't have losses forever. Well, these guys, it was 1998 that they set the business up. 2010 the case was to 2014. But that did take 2 years of our lives. But we made a lot of money out of that case as well, really.
Right.
They were great payers to the government, America. And it was the High Court in Pennsylvania, really. It was when I look back, it was just amazing what happened there, really. I was pretty proud of that case, really. Proud of Vallejo, proud of the work we did, because it was a long, long job, you know.
You get up pretty early in the morning. I suppose you've got to get into their time in many ways.
Yeah, I've always got up early, milking cows when you're young, you see, so always get up no later than 4 o'clock unless you have a bad day, a bad night or something. It's the hardest these days when you stay out and watch the races late. Yep. Because you've got to start.
Well, you only have to peer over there. It's not, you don't have to go far.
It's not far.
What's the best horse you've seen, JC?
It have to be Bulldog Hanover, I think, for sure. You know, he's just a...
Dexter drove, had a steer on him.
He was just
Is he our greatest export, D. Dunn?
Without any doubt. I just cannot believe the way this country operates in terms of Dexter Dunn. He should be on a pedestal in New Zealand as one of our greatest ever sports stars, and yet what does anybody do for him? You know, I mean...
He should be in the Hellbergs.
Yep, he really should. He's one of our greatest ever exports by far.
Who's the best horse person you've ever seen?
Bill Robinson. By far.
Right.
If you went to his stables and saw him when he was going really good, Bill Robinson, he's fed 4 times a day. It also looks sensational. I stayed with him a few times, and it was just amazing and how those horses performed. Like, he had horses like Cam's Card Shark, Presidential. We had every great horse, Mark III, Art Major, and I was at a conference in Florida a few years ago, and I got attacked. I had to speak about harness racing. One of the things I thought was the greatest tragedy in America was that they wouldn't put Art Major in the Hall of Fame because of the association with Bill Robinson. So I said to them, I said, how come all these horses that Bill Robinson trained all turned out to be great, great sires, and you fellas don't want to put them in the Hall of Fame? I mean, it's just... But I got really told off that day, not by the USDA, the guys that were running it. They were very happy with it. They said, you can say whatever you like in this country. Yeah. And I did say it, you know, because I thought that was a travesty, because he was a great horse, you know.
Yeah, well, we've got a shot of your daily worksheet. You're not letting up, even now you're in your 70s. I know you won't mind me saying that, but this game's been good to you, isn't it?
It's been very good, really. Yeah. No, it's been super good. As I say, it's a passion. And that's what I need in harness link, more people with passion, more and more.
Always a salesman, eh?
Always a salesman.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for spending a bit of time with us.
No worries.
Great to catch up.
Very good.